The taxi smelled old, musty, like wet newspapers and stale cigarettes. I slid across the cracked leather seat. I just wanted to get home. It was later than usual. The city outside my window looked dark and unfamiliar.
Where to?
14 Elm Street, I told him.
The driver grumbled. He didn't even look at Alex. His voice was rough, like sandpaper on wood.
He grunted and pulled away from the curb. The engine coughed and sputtered. We lurched into the night. I clutched my backpack. I wished I had caught an earlier bus, but my study session had run late. Now I was alone, in a taxi, with a driver who didn't like to talk. Perfect. The city lights flickered past, casting fleeting shadows on the rain-slicked streets. The taxi sped through the labyrinth of the city, each turn more disorienting than the last. I stared out the window, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my gut. The streets outside were empty, save for the occasional figure hurrying through the night. The city felt alive, but in a way that made my skin crawl. It was then that I heard it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable. It was like a breath against my ear, sending shivers down my spine. I strained to hear, but the words were elusive, like smoke in the wind. It seemed to be coming from the seat beside me, the empty seat. My heart raced as I glanced over, half expecting to see someone or something sitting there.
Don't trust. The words were barely audible, but they were clear enough to send a jolt of fear through me.
I froze. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Was it real, or was my mind playing tricks on me? My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. I gripped the seat, my knuckles white with fear. I slowly turned my head, dreading what I might see. But there was nothing there, just the empty seat, bathed in the dim glow of the taxi's interior lights.
Everything all right back there? The driver's voice cut through the silence, startling me.
The driver rasped, his voice rough and unsettling. It was as if he knew something I didn't. He still wasn't looking at Alex. His eyes stayed glued to the road, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. His eyes stayed glued to the road, the headlights cutting through the fog like knives. The road ahead seemed to stretch into infinity, an endless path into the unknown.
Did you hear that? I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. I needed to know if I was losing my mind.
The driver chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that sent chills down my spine. Hear what? You're hearing things, kid. Hear what? You're hearing things, kid. His words were dismissive, but his tone carried an edge that made me uneasy. Happens all the time in this city. Gets in your head. The city's eerie atmosphere seemed to seep into my very bones, making it hard to distinguish reality from illusion.
I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that it was just my imagination, that the city was playing tricks on me. But I knew what I'd heard. The whisper was too real, too chilling to be a mere figment of my imagination. Or at least, I thought I did. Doubt gnawed at me, making me question my own sanity. The night stretched on, filled with shadows and whispers, leaving me to wonder what was real and what was not. My fingers tightened around my backpack strap, knuckles turning white with the pressure. The dim light inside the taxi made everything seem more ominous, shadows dancing on the walls. I felt a cold sweat prickling my skin, each bead of perspiration a testament to my growing unease. The air inside the taxi was thick, almost suffocating. The taxi seemed to grow colder with each passing second, my breath visible in the frigid air. It was as if the temperature was dropping in sync with my rising fear. The air grew heavy, difficult to breathe. Outside, the fog wrapped around the taxi like a shroud, obscuring everything beyond a few feet.
This ride, the driver said, his voice low and gravelly, like the rumble of distant thunder. It ain't a normal one. It ain't a normal one. Not after midnight, it ain't. His words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Not after midnight, it ain't. The clock had just struck 12, and the city seemed to transform into a different place altogether.
I wanted to ask him what he meant, to understand the cryptic warning he had given, but the words caught in my throat, fear paralyzing my voice. But the words caught in my throat, as if my body refused to let me speak. The silence between us grew louder, filled with unspoken dread. His words, spoken so casually, sent a shiver down my spine. It was the kind of casual that comes from knowing something terrible, something inevitable.
The driver continued, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, unblinking and intense. He seemed to be looking for something, or perhaps someone.
This city, it's got a way of showing you things, he murmured, almost to himself. Things you wish you hadn't seen. Things you wish you hadn't seen. His words, painted images of shadowy figures and dark corners, places where nightmares come to life.
His words did little to calm my nerves. In fact, they only heightened my sense of impending doom. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. I wished I had never gotten in this taxi. The decision to hail it now seemed like a grave mistake, one that I might not live to regret. I just wanted it to be over. I stared out of the window, hoping to see something familiar, something that would signal the end of this nightmare ride, but all I saw was darkness, stretching endlessly. We turned onto my street, or at least, I thought it was my street. The buildings looked unfamiliar, twisted like something out of a nightmare. "Wait," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't right, this isn't my street."
The driver didn't respond. He kept driving, deeper into the darkness. The streetlights became more scarce. The darkness pressed in around us. The temperature in the taxi plummeted. I could see my breath in the air. My breath was ragged and shallow. Panic began to rise in my chest. Something was wrong, terribly wrong.
My eyes darted around the taxi's interior, desperately searching for an escape, or an explanation. That's when I saw it. A faint blue glimmer, coming from beneath the ripped seat cushion beside me. I reached out, my hand shaking. My fingers brushed against something cold and smooth. Metal. I pulled it out. It was a locket, tarnished silver, a delicate heart shape. I hesitated for a moment. Then, curiosity overwhelming my fear, I pried it open. Inside was a faded photograph. 2 young girls. They were smiling, their arms linked together. They looked so happy, so alive. I felt a pang of sadness, and a growing sense of dread. "Those girls," I began, my voice a choked whisper, but the words died in my throat. I looked up at the rearview mirror. The driver was gone. In his place I saw them, the girls from the photograph. Their faces were pale and gaunt. Their eyes were hollow, filled with an emptiness that chilled me to the bone. They stared at me, their lips curled into cruel smiles. I screamed, a desperate, primal sound. The locket slipped from my grasp. It clattered to the floor of the taxi, disappearing into the darkness beneath the seat. I fumbled with the door handle. It wouldn't budge. I beat against the window, pounded on it with my fists, but it was no use. I was trapped. The taxi picked up speed, hurtling down the deserted road. The city lights were long gone. Only darkness stretched before us. The faces in the rearview mirror were closer now. Their eyes burned into mine. I could feel their icy gaze penetrating my skin, chilling me to my core. Tears streamed down my face. I closed my eyes, willing myself to wake up from this nightmare, but deep down I knew this was real. Then I saw it. Up ahead, a sharp bend in the road. Beyond it, a sheer drop. The edge of a cliff. My heart leaped into my throat. This was it, my last chance. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do. It was a long shot, but better than accepting my fate. As the taxi careened towards the bend, I braced myself against the back seat. I waited for the precise moment. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, I launched myself across the seat. I crashed into the driver's side door. The impact knocked the breath out of me. The taxi swerved violently. Tires screamed against asphalt. I looked up. The girls in the rearview mirror were gone, replaced by the terrified face of the driver. His eyes were wide with fear. His hands struggled to regain control of the wheel. The taxi teetered on the edge of the precipice. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, with a sickening crunch of metal, the taxi plunged over the side. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the impact, but it never came. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the side of the road. My body ached, my head spun, but I was alive. The taxi was gone, vanished without a trace. The night was eerily silent, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. I tried to remember how I got there, but my mind was a foggy mess, as if it had never existed. The last thing I remembered was getting into the taxi, the driver's face obscured by shadows. There was something unsettling about him, but I was too tired to care. I just wanted to get home. I sat there for a long time, the cold seeped into my bones and I hugged myself to keep warm. The road was deserted, not a single car in sight. I felt utterly alone, abandoned in the middle of nowhere, shaking and trying to make sense of what had happened. My hands trembled uncontrollably, and my breath came in short, panicked gasps. I kept replaying the events in my mind, trying to piece together the puzzle, but it was like trying to grasp smoke. The sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the road. The first light of dawn brought a semblance of comfort, but the chill in my heart remained. The world around me started to wake up, but I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare. A police car pulled up beside me. The flashing lights were almost blinding after the darkness. The officer stepped out, his face a mix of concern and suspicion. I told the officer my story, every detail, every strange occurrence. I hoped he would believe me, that he would understand the terror I felt. But he just looked at me like I was crazy. His eyes narrowed, and he asked me if I had been drinking or taking any drugs. I shook my head, feeling a lump form in my throat. There was no evidence of the taxi, no sign that it had ever been there. The road was pristine, untouched. It was as if the night had swallowed it whole. No skid marks, nothing. The officer walked around, shining his flashlight, but there was nothing to find. It was like the taxi had been a figment of my imagination. I never found out what happened that night. The questions haunted me, gnawing at my sanity. How did I end up on the side of the road? Where did the taxi go? And who was the driver? Or who those girls were? The ones I saw in the back seat, their faces pale and eyes hollow. They seemed to whisper secrets, secrets that I could never understand. But one thing's for sure, the memory of that night is etched into my mind. A scar that will never fade. The fear, the confusion, the sense of being lost in a world that no longer made sense. I'll never forget the chilling whisper from the back seat. It was a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the abyss, a voice that sent shivers down my spine. It said my name over and over like a sinister chant, and I'll never ride in a taxi again, not after midnight. The thought of it fills me with dread. I'd rather walk for miles in the dark than ever step into another taxi. The lingering chill of that night will stay with me forever.